Tristan, you ready? All right, people. Now, when we laugh, everyone laugh loud. Just kidding. Has anyone ever done a live studio audience thing?
No.
There's literally someone to coach the audience and like how to respond to what happens. And it's, yeah, yes, there are signs and things.
The sign thing, UCG,
Yeah.
was hallelujah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sweet baby. Yeah, when I hold my pad up like this, everyone say, oh, sweet baby. Tristan, are you live?
Yep.
Tristan is live. I kind of want to look at it on my phone. Would that be weird? Maybe we can take Q&A from the audience at home.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Good morning, everyone. Today is an incredibly joyful day at the United Church of Gainesville, as this afternoon we get to ordain Rachel Kirk, huzzah, daughter of our congregation. So what we're going to do today is just give you an opportunity to get to know Rachel a little bit more, get to hear a little bit of her faith story, and fill in some blanks for us. And of course, any questions that you might want to ask these people, you can do that too. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So in 1624, the Athanasian debate was. Did you do the ecclesiastical council?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get made?
They didn't ask me that.
Yeah, no. I was always afraid of that.
Yeah.
The path to ordination. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But before we get into that, tell us your faith growing up. Tell us your faith journey.
Okay. Hi. So I grew up at UCG my entire life. My parents moved to Gainesville in '89. Cool. Yeah, so I was born and pretty much, from what I've been told, immediately was here. So this is my faith tradition, is UCG. It's a big question. I would say what I learned at UCG was, people would talk about God. So I thought about God and formed a childlike relationship to God. And from the way I remember that is relating to God as spirit. And that always felt very accessible to me and very natural to me, that there's something beyond us, and everyone around me is talking about that. And another thing I absorbed was that religion is very personal, and you are allowed to and expected to ask questions about your religion. People can believe different things, probably some more lessons as well. And when I was in high school, I started reading the Bible and had what I would call a conversion experience. I read about Jesus and felt very strongly, in a way I can't really explain still, that I wanted to follow Jesus and I wanted to be a Christian. And I found that felt a little bit edgy for being here. It was my version of teenage rebellion in a way. But I also knew that UCG was a place where we can believe different things. So I was very involved in this community. As many of you remember, I was making music, and I did childcare for a minute, did all the youth group stuff. So this was my home and where I learned what it means to be a community. And that was something very powerful, and something I still think is very powerful that a lot of people my age don't have. Knowing what it's like to know who you're going to call in an emergency beyond your family, or like what it means to be there for somebody who's going through something horrible. Like I had done that many times, and that was very natural for me. I think something that's natural for most humans in the scheme of the world, but not so much in our current U.S. society. So. How far do you want me to go?
That's great.
It's age 18.
Yeah. And I still remember we baptized you on confirmation day.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was a powerful moment. And I do remember those conversations that we used to have. Rachel was never afraid to knock on the door and ask the really hard questions. And I loved that. And I loved that we had those engaging conversations, because we don't often have young people taking that level of initiative or degree with their faith. And so when they do, we are thrilled, absolutely thrilled. So Yeah, I remember it well. And I remember, I think you said, like, I just love Jesus. Like, I remember you saying it almost with that degree of emphasis. And it was powerful. And that's when I was like, oh man, I wonder if Rachel is interested in the ministry. So when were you interested? When did you have your first inklings of a call to the ministry?
Well, as someone who was interested in church and faith, which felt separate to me, sort of, but connected, it was natural to kind of think about, is this something I would want to do professionally? And I, growing up, always felt obviously no, because I don't feel like I have natural gifts for public speaking. That was something that was very scary for me, and felt like of all of the things, that should be the one that comes easily, and then other skills for ministry are things you can learn along the way. So pretty quickly after I started college, a few things happened. One, I met other students who were equally excited about church, which is, again, kind of edgy for college students these days. We were like so excited about it. One of them actually has shared a sermon with us for my ordination, so you'll get to hear from him later. And that person, Jake Joseph, was planning on going to seminary. He was in his last year of college, already doing his applications and stuff. So I got to kind of see, someone who shares this with me is doing this. This is the thing that real people do. No offense, but like people my age can do this. Like it's a real thing. And other students starting college as well. So I had that. I had academically, I got to learn. I ended up majoring in religious studies and really loved being able to like expand my interest in religion, learn about other religions, and kind of parse out the differences between studying religion and practicing religion. And I still love all of that very much. And then also, again, the passion I feel for community and establishing communities and helping people find that, which is something I think is missing for a lot of us. So, I had a few people early in my college career kind of help me connect those dots. Also, I'd always wanted to be a therapist. So I had perceived in myself gifts for listening and for being with people. And this all comes together really well. And as I tell it now, it's like, this is kind of like, this makes sense. But yeah, felt like a big step to overcome that hurdle of I'm not naturally gifted at public speaking, and had actually one of my professors be like, well, you could practice it. Like, you can learn something and get better at it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did that.
Where did you do undergrad?
Grinnell College in Iowa.
Oh,
It's a small liberal arts school.
That's also UCC, isn't it?
Historically, yes. That's not something current students there knew about much, except the ones who were going to church with me, like world history and stuff. It has a UCC ethos, I would say, without knowing it.
And there was a group of you that would go to church on a regular basis, but you would drive like an hour away, wouldn't you?
So there was, we were in Grinnell, which is kind of smack in the middle of Iowa. It's about an hour from Des Moines, which is the capital. Isn't it the capital? I think it's the capital. Okay, sorry. So it's a larger city. And there's a very large UCC church, really well-known church, Plymouth. A lot of them are called Plymouth, but they had a Saturday night service, which had kind of folky, bluegrassy music, and had people sitting around tables. And the tables had paper on them, so you could color while you were listening to stuff. And they had this way of preaching that was short sermons, but really well thought out. And it's something about that service was really appealing to us and worked for us. So we made a whole little evening of it. We'd go to dinner and hang out. But then I also went to a more traditional UCC church in town, the town of Grinnell, which is a very small town. And that actually ended up being great for me as well. That was more me getting to kind of connect with the place that I lived, which often had a pretty sharp divide between the students and the people in the town. So I got to, this is a very historic church in that area, actually founded by the founder of the college. So that was a fun connection. very intellectual congregational roots church. And I got a lot of cool support there as well, kind of getting to know the older people there and hear about what life was like in that area, a perspective that a lot of my peers didn't get if they weren't doing that. So yeah, we were into all of it.
I love it. I love that you were part of the local community, and it speaks to also this desire of yours to enhance, create, and be part of community. But then you also went to Plymouth. If you've read the book Leading the Large Congregation by Susan Beaumont, she bases, did I just church nerd out? I did. Oh, hi Leslie. But she bases her, a lot of her studies on this particular congregation. They are
Very
tops.
big. Yeah.
They are really terrific. So, speaking of education, you went from Grinnell. Then you were like, you know what? I might try this seminary thing, and you went to Vandy. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I went to Vanderbilt Divinity School, which is it's not religiously affiliated at this point, has a very strong tradition of social justice emphasis. There are not many UCC students there, which was an interesting experience for me. There's like a handful each year. But what one of the professors told me on like our orientation night or whatever, was you'll find that you fit in well being UCC. Like there won't be a lot of UCC people, but the things they're talking about are very UCC. And I absolutely found that to be true. Yeah, but I really appreciated getting to see what I had in common with United Methodists and Disciples of Christ and different traditions who have converged and diverged from the UCC at various points. And I cherish some of those friendships still. Yeah.
So when you went to the Divinity School, did you know that you were likely going to seek ordained ministry?
Good question. So at that point, I've always been very excited about congregational ministry. And I also was interested in chaplaincy and exploring if that was something I was called to. So maybe being a hospital chaplain, or you can serve in other settings as college chaplaincy would be one. So that's kind of where I was at. I was discerning that, and I did end up exploring chaplaincy, doing a few different internships where you basically get thrown in and get to work as a hospital chaplain, and then also have some intentional opportunities for like education type conversations. So, we'd write little papers about your conversations with people and have your peers ask you, why did you say that? Or what did you think at this point? And that's a cherished tradition for many seminary graduates who had good and bad experiences with that type of internship program. Mine were very good. It was very, challenging, but affirming to see myself grow, I guess, and learning to relate to different types of people.
And so about that time, too, is that about when you were said, maybe this ordained thing is something worth pursuing? Or was that before that?
I started, I was pretty interested in ordination through college and kind of used that as a way to do different internships and make friends with all the pastors I encountered. And I was pretty hardcore about it, which is strange for me looking back because it's really shaped my entire life. Like, I don't know who I would be if I hadn't been on this path, which is really cool. And honestly, one of the strongest ways I've known God is how much I've grown in the process of pursuing what I believed I was called to do and didn't trust that I could do. Yeah, so I would say that I actually officially started the ordination process right when I started div school. So I came back here, met with the church council, is that what you call it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I wrote a little paper about my journey, and they affirmed me to the Florida Conference Committee on Ministry. And I've had to meet with them several times over that period. Yeah.
And Leslie Etheridge is our regional
Yes.
conference minister for
Leslie's
Florida
been
Conference of the United Church of Christ. And Leslie has ushered Rachel through this journey, serving as a mentor, a guide, a friend, and a to-do list taskmaster, I believe. And so we're honored and thrilled that Leslie's with us to celebrate the ordination this afternoon as well. So as you were expanding your community and you were expanding your opportunities to engage in ministry in different contexts, you also had an opportunity to serve the national church.
Sure, yeah. So this was another byproduct of my very enthusiastic college friends. One of them knew about the Council for Youth and Young Adult Ministries, which no longer exists in the same form. But that was a chance for people ages, I think it was like 13 to 35. So trying to really tackle youth as in high schoolers and young adults as in 18 to 30 or 35-ish. And be a voice for them in the wider church, because that is young people are a group that is underrepresented in many congregations and in the church as a whole. So that was really cool for me. I got to go to Cleveland, which is where the national offices are of the UCC. I got to meet people who were in UCC churches, young people who were in UCC churches all over the country, and see what we had in common and what was different, and kind of talk about bigger picture stuff, which was really great for me personally, and just kind of growing up, and was one of my first experiences being on a committee at all, so that was cool.
Was it? Good.
Yeah, it's an important skill to have. Yeah, and we got to go to several different, we had our meetings at several different places. Like one I remember was, I think it's called Franklinton Center.
Yeah.
It's in North Carolina, which has, I forget if it was a former plantation where people were enslaved, or has some historical information about enslaved peoples who were there. So
It was also one of the first formal schools created in the South for former slaves.
yes. So that's
formerly enslaved people.
a site that the UCC is sort of promoting as a conference location. So we got to try a few of those out and hear their stories.
So you chose to do your CPE in Denver. Why Denver?
Denver was random. Denver.
What's CPE?
Yes.
Clinical Pastoral Education. So most seminaries will require at least one semester of CPE. But Rachel went in for a full year of clinical pastoral education. This is, again, probably part of your discernment in trying to figure out whether it was chaplaincy that you were interested in going into.
Yeah.
But is that good?
Yeah, so the chaplaincy experience I was talking about. Yeah, so I was graduating divinity school and was kind of figuring out what's next. And I think I was more thinking I would end up in a church eventually, but know that I had a great experience being a chaplain and wanted to continue to develop those skills. Also, one of the things I said at the time, when I did interviews and stuff, was I knew I was very young, like I think I was 24. So I thought it would be helpful for me to learn a little more about life from like people, like at least by talking to people who are in different ages and stages of life, by spending more time in a hospital. And keep having that kind of building growth experience that I had already. So it's a 1-year position, and I was kind of looking at those all over the place, but at that time I was dating my wife, Haley, who's back here. We weren't married, but we were dating. And we were like, where should we go for a year? So Denver came up, and she's like, that'd be fun, and it was kind of that random. I got into that one, that's another another factor. But I've obviously not been afraid to hop around the country. I'm getting over that tendency now. It has its downsides, but yeah, and we ended up being there for 3 years.
Joanne?
I'm just curious of how the divinity schools talk about original sin.
Oh, man.
Okay, here's your curveball. I guess we're going there.
So my,
What?
oh,
You
yes.
can repeat the question.
I was supposed to repeat the question.
Right.
The question was, how do divinity schools talk about original sin? So my divinity school is known as one of the edgy progressive ones. So first of all, since it's a multi-denominational seminary, I wasn't like taught like you have to believe anything. Like it is an academic institution, so we're reading famous theologians and discussing them and saying, how does this strike you? What do you think about this? So we're not all in agreement by any means on big questions like that. But I'd say at my divinity school, not favorably, like that was not a popular idea among my peers. I'm sure that is quite different elsewhere, but yeah.
Yep, makes sense. Mine was the same way. Or it was ministry for the real world, and our Old Testament professor would regularly just put the question right back on us. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that? And that
So
tends,
you can still be a leader of the flock and without espousing certain doctrines.
I mean, it depends on which flock, I suppose, and it depends on which denomination you seek to serve. But for the UCC,
I don't care. I mean, I don't think I was asked about that in my ecclesiastical council, which was the Florida Conference's regional committee on ministry. So, well, I won't get into that, but, if that was important to them for me to believe a certain thing, they could have asked me that, or in my interview for a certain position, they could ask me that if that was really important. But that would shock me to hear that anyone had that experience in the UCC.
Well, isn't it more of a Catholic thing?
No, I mean,
No.
Baptist.
well, speaking of which, why don't you tell us about your call now? So Rachel serves St. John's Church in Freeport, Illinois. Those of you who know Illinois, it's about an hour west of Rockford, the thriving metropolis of Rockford, which is like an hour and a half west of Chicago. So
Yeah.
tell us about your call.
That may be kind of close to Iowa?
It's close.
Kind of, yeah. Adjacent state, but yeah, many hours from Iowa. Actually, yeah, it is fairly close to the border, just not where I was in Iowa. But yeah, my title is Pastor for Community and Mission, which is an associate pastor position. The senior pastor I work with is actually a friend of Andy's from seminary, so that's
Thanks
a
very
fun
Oh, that's interesting.
full circle thing.
And my dad went to Grinnell. So when
Oh,
Rachel
yeah.
said she was going to Grinnell, I was like, I know Grinnell.
We have mutual friends.
Yeah. And then also,
That was fun.
yeah, and then Hank Fairman serves as one of the pastors at St. John's. So I'll tell you stories about Hank later because I know he's listening to this YouTube right now. So yeah, be careful. Anything you say.
Yeah. I got it.
So what does it mean to be the minister for community and
Community and mission.
mission?
It's very vague, my title. So what I do is anything faith formation is kind of under my umbrella. So coordinating from infancy to adult faith formation, educational stuff is one of the main groups that I work with. The congregation has, as one of its ministries to the community, a after-school program for middle schoolers that happens once a week. And it's not actually faith-based. We teach social emotional learning, which is at this age things like setting goals and making friends and being responsible and things like that. Any psychologist will know more than me. But so I'm running that program. And so there's a team of us who are there at the site, but that is not something I ever thought I would like doing, but I love it. It's so much fun. Like, middle schoolers are weird, and I'm enjoying that.
So
there's
what's your church like? Is it more traditional than UCG, or is it like UCG, or?
yeah. So questions, what's my church like related to UCG? Definitely more traditional. I don't know what traditional means. Like that's a vague term, but has been around a lot longer than UCG, so has German Reformed roots. It actually was a German-speaking church until the 20th century. It is one of the larger churches in our town. It's a fairly small town, so being at a small town, fairly large church, there's a lot of room for influence there. And it's also the progressive church of that area. Again, progressive is a spectrum, certainly, but it has been O&A since 2013, I think, or 2012 maybe, but that's quite edgy in that community. It's the only O&A church for miles around. So it's a really powerful opportunity there for this larger church to be, one of the pillar churches of that community, to be kind of a witness to its area. The town itself is about 20,000 people, so fairly small. That was a big change from Denver for sure. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Since I went to college in a much smaller town, I had good memories of that experience in the Midwest. So
So what does the mission component of your call?
Yes, good. Thank you. So at this point, so the mission work, I guess I'm technically overseeing this, although it happens without me. Our church is very generous in terms of giving to a homeless organization when it's actually formed by all of the different churches in the area. So I get to work with them as a team to provide for our homeless population. They also do various food drives and clothing drives and stuff. And what beyond that, I don't think we really know. There have been some anti-racism initiatives or conversations that have started happening. We formed an anti-racism team, and I'm a part of that. And that has currently looked like planning events for speakers. So feels like a baby step to me, but something that I'm looking forward to kind of working with to see what mission will be, like what does it mean to be the progressive church in this area in a culture where, if you're familiar with the Midwest and the rural Midwest, it's very private and maybe uncomfortable, kind of like I talk about in the sermon, uncomfortable sharing opinions, or I think the church struggles to kind of be controversial, which to do justice work, you have to be. So yeah, that's a growing edge, I would say. But we also have a mission grants program, so they're yearly receive applications from organizations to get grant money from us, which is a cool way that we could be investing in different things happening nationwide, actually, but especially in our community as well.
How many congregants do you know?
They claim 500.
Okay. How many congregants? How many people are on the rolls? We have 632. 500 on the rolls.
Close.
20,000.
Yeah, I know.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then,
I also do worship stuff. I didn't mention that, but I'm
Yeah.
preaching every, probably as much as I wanted to, but 4 to 6 weeks, which is ideal for me. So I can keep practicing, but also get to do other stuff, which was a fear I had about trying to be a solo pastor, so that I would kind of get wrapped up in the preaching and stressing about that and not get to do all of the other work. That is why I want to be here in the first place.
there's
so-
another ordained person on the staff who does pastoral care visits? Is that right?
No, so it's me, Hank, and Andy was asking if someone else did pastoral care. There's another staff member. She is not ordained. She has been in that congregation since she was a child, and effectively does a lot of pastoral care without a formal I say that's part of her job, is checking in on people and keeping track of attendance and numbers, and also holds the institutional memory of this place in a place where that's very important. So she's excellent. Yeah.
Terrific. Tristan?
We have a question online
Ooh.
from Susan. So many young people of your age have left faith institutions and declared themselves atheists. My question is, have you seen this trend, and what do you say to them?
Cool. So I don't have to repeat that one because
Yeah,
you heard.
they get
Okay. Cool. So I've tried to answer this variations on this a lot in my life, and in a way I'm the worst person to ask because that was not my experience, and I've always been in churches. So I don't necessarily understand that perspective. Have I seen that trend? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about the declaring themselves atheist part, though. I think the data shows that people believe in God as much as they ever have, but their connections to institutions in different generations are quite different. So my question that I kind of ask myself and try to focus my work around is how do I make the argument for community? Because I believe that that's an important way to meet spiritual needs that go unmet if you're doing your own thing by yourself. So again, I don't necessarily know what to say to them, and I certainly don't argue about God with anyone, argue to make anyone believe in God. Again, I grew up at UCG. I know kind of how these conversations can go, and I know that that's not helpful because people have reasons for what they believe. certainly benefits of community are kind of some of the things I listed, like knowing who you're going to call in a crisis, or having people check in on you before you're in a crisis, maybe. Thinking through big questions when you're not on your deathbed, like when you have time to live your life. Could go on probably.
That's a terrific answer. We have 2 more minutes, and then we want to make sure Rachel gets a little rest before she gets to preach again. Flo?
Rachel, do you have, you mentioned that yours was the only O&A church in the area. Do you find it to be an essential part of your ministry? And is it a destination for LGBT identified folks to attend your church?
So the question was about my church being O&A and whether it is a, what did you say, destination for LGBTQ people. And the answer is yes, absolutely. Since the church became O&A, it has gained members, and a lot of LGBTQ members or those who are looking for an affirming church. And I think that's a story that we've heard over and over again throughout the O&A movement. And is that an important part of my ministry? Yes. Yeah. The church has actually, right now it's working as a support group for LGBT people, like all ages. It feels more like a social gathering to me, but that is something we also advertise, that in a non-religious, it's in a religious space, but a non-religious group, if you'd like to come and talk about this stuff and have friends and stuff who won't judge you for being LGBTQ or for questioning or whatever it may be, that you can come hang out with us. So, yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Rachel before we bring this to a close?
My dad had his hand raised. Is that a good question?
What you got, Paul?
It was more like, I was fascinated when you talk about your church being kind of reserved and, quiet, but meeting them on Facebook, talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually sort of an advantage or a different way of meeting your congregation.
Yeah, so the challenges and benefits of starting a church during COVID, we were online. I actually talked to Bromley about this and got to kind of bond with her because she was in a similar situation. I mean, it was not great. Like, I am in this to be with people face to face and be able to hug and hold hands and whatnot. Like, that's so important and what I think ministry is supposed to be. But I did get to meet a lot of people first on Zoom where they have their face and their little name in the corner, and that helped me learn names. I got to kind of get settled in my office before anyone else was in the building, so there's benefits to that. Like, it was a very strange experience and not one I would recommend, but I'm just happy to be there. It's a good time.
When Rachel and Haley came in, they first checked out the vibe of each of our offices.
They're painted colors and stuff. So it's cool.
Mine's not. Mine's
Okay.
flat and boring.
Yours is cool.
But I think Talia's was the most appealing, though. So Henry Nouwen has said that your call comes towards the place where your greatest gifts meet the world's deep needs. And so where would you say your gifts of ministry might be called to meet the world's deep needs?
I think that my main gift is in connecting with people, and more so probably in the challenges, maybe in the joys too, but I really see pastoral care like I practiced as a chaplain, it's really a joy for me. It's really fulfilling. I love that I'm not afraid of talking about the scary stuff or the sad stuff. That's clearly a need, like something that will always come up for all of us, even the incredibly privileged. We all deal with death, if nothing else. So there's that. And I also, I think, I'm not sure if I have natural gifts for this, but my passion for community is another thing that's led me here, that I don't know if I'm good at like running a church, but I know that it's so important, and all that I want to be doing is making sure that these type of communities, spaces exist where we can remember our obligations to each other and take care of each other, and the fun stuff. Yeah.
I'm so proud. We are so proud. You are so proud. So Phil, congratulations. Well done. Serve faithfully, and you will do so well.
Thanks.
So, and you can always come back home to us.
Yeah.
So, thanks everyone. Appreciate it. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon for Rachel's official ordination.